You been running around the city like a foot track, getting high, getting drunk, bitch. What the fuck is that, man? I am finally finished. Take me to the beginning before I knew you were sinning, because I'm sick of this feeling. All this rage I'm keeping with all this hatred I'm building, and all the thoughts that I'm having, the fucking demons I'm fighting. Bitch, you can call me your highness. That's right, I'm finally flying. Now that I got an assignment, I own my mind and my grind in.
I know you've been running around, and I know how this shit goes down, but you won't see no tears from a clown. Say, I know you've been running around, and I know how this shit goes down, but you won't see no tears from a clown, 'cause
The night air carried the heavy scent of cane fields and swamp water, a mix that never left Baton Rouge's back roads. The scrapyard chosen for the meeting lay half hidden behind a shuttered sugar mill, its rusting walls rising like a fortress of decay. Rows of broken cars leaned on each other in crooked stacks, their windows punched out and doors hanging loose. Beyond them, the cypress trees pressed close, their roots twisting out of the dark muck like knotted bones. It was neutral ground in theory, though Lamar knew there was no such thing anymore. He sat in his cousin's Silverado, the wheel under his hand, and his eyes fixed on the other line of headlights cutting across the yard. Whitey's crew. The very sight of them made his chest feel tight, like the night itself was pressing down on him. Once, they had all been the same. One crew, one brotherhood. The streets of North Baton Rouge had belonged to them. Every block, every corner store, every shadowed alley where money changed hands. There had been respect then, not just among themselves, but from everyone around. You didn't cross them, because if you did, you'd answer to all of them. That unity had died the night Dion bled out on a mattress. Lamar could still see it clear. His closest cousin, a boy who had carried him home from fistfights and stood watch when he had sprinted track in high school, was left with wide eyes, staring at nothing. The people who pulled the trigger hadn't even been strangers. They had been family once. Whitey hadn't done it himself, but he had been standing with the ones who did, and that was enough. In Lamar's heart, Whitey's silence that night had been the same as a bullet. He gripped the wheel tighter, his knuckles pale in the dim cab light. The old heads had set this meeting up because they were tired of funerals, tired of mothers crying, tired of bodies on both sides getting dumped in ditches. But Lamar couldn't picture peace, not when blood had run this deep. He pushed the door open and stepped out, gravel crunching under his sneakers. The night wrapped him in its damp warmth, the cicadas buzzing, the hum of distant power lines faint overhead. He adjusted the strap across his chest and looked toward the gutted school bus parked near the center of the yard. One of his OGs stood on its steps, hands raised like he was about to preach. On the other side, one of Whitey's elders leaned against a rusted hood, cigarette tip glowing like a red bead. Two men who carried enough weight to drag both sides here, praying it would matter. Across the yard, Whitey climbed out of his own ride. The man hadn't changed much. Broad shoulders, solid frame, the look of someone who carried himself like he belonged, even when he didn't by birth. A white boy in a black crew, and one of the rare few who hadn't just survived, but thrived. Whitey had taken his licks back when he first came around, beatdowns, tests, challenges, and instead of folding, he had earned his place. For years, Lamar had called him brother. Now he could hardly stand to look at him. Their eyes met across the lot, the kind of stare that pressed memory and hatred into the same vein. Lamar remembered nights of laughter, bloody knuckles from fights they had won together, secrets whispered in back alleys. But just as quick, he remembered the betrayal, the split, and how many funerals had come after. Whitey felt the weight of it too. He stood stiff by the hood of a Crown Vic, his jaw clenched, scanning the lot. He thought about the nights when he had been nothing more than an outsider, fighting for scraps of respect. Lamar had been the first to give him that nod, to call him by name instead of by the color of his skin. That bond had carried him through more nights than he could count. And then it had all collapsed. Whitey hadn't pulled that trigger, but when Dion went cold, his silence had been damning. The people responsible had been his people, his side, and he had chosen them. In Lamar's eyes, that choice had branded him forever. Whitey hated himself for it more than he'd ever admit. The old heads started talking. The preacher on the bus spoke of mothers and children, of how money meant nothing when every dollar was blood-soaked. He raised his voice against the night, echoing off the steel and glass, asking if anyone wanted their little brothers and cousins to die the same way they had been dying. Whitey's elders smoked and talked of business, of how heat from the cops was burning them both out. If they stopped spilling each other's blood, they could move without eyes on their backs, stack paper, live better. His words were smooth, practiced, the kind of talk that sounded good even to men who didn't believe it. Lamar shifted his weight and let the words wash over him. He knew the truth. No speech was going to bring Dion back. No sermon could erase years of violence. His chest ached with the memory of every man they had buried. Every night, he had sat awake gripping a pistol, waiting for payback to come through his window. Whitey scanned the faces around him, his pulse steady, but his stomach tight. He knew no one trusted him, not anymore, but he still remembered the feeling of belonging, of standing shoulder to shoulder with Lamar, like the world was theirs to carve up. He wanted to believe it could happen again, though part of him knew it couldn't. The air in the yard thickened. Men shifted, muttered, hands brushing against pistols tucked under hoodies. No one trusted anyone enough to keep still. It only took one glance the wrong way, one nervous twitch to spark it, and then it came. A shout cut the night, followed by the sharp crack of a gunshot. Sparks flew off the side of the scrap wall, and the preacher on the bus ducked fast. For a moment, silence held, that tight breath before a storm breaks. Then the yard erupted. Gunfire cracked across the yard, hot flashes bouncing off rusted steel, the smell of powder thick in the air. Men dove behind junked cars, spraying shots through shattered windshields and over twisted hoods. Lamar ducked low, his shoulder pressing against the dented side of an old pickup, muzzle flashing as he returned fire. The noise was deafening, bullets whistling past with sharp snaps, the scrapyard becoming a war zone in seconds. He spotted one of Whitey's boys drop with a shot to the stomach, clutching at his gut as he screamed. Lamar didn't feel satisfaction. It was just another tally in a war that had already claimed too much. His chest burned with the memory of Dion's face, pale under the flicker of streetlights. Every trigger pull was like pouring more fuel on a fire that never went out. Across the yard, Whitey crouched behind the hood of a Crown Vic, pistol in hand, jaw tight. He leaned out and fired in quick bursts, then ducked back as rounds smacked into the steel beside him. His heart was steady, years of street fights and close calls having taught him how to keep calm under fire. But inside there was a weight pressing him down. He could see Lamar through the chaos, face hard, eyes sharp, the same man he used to trust with his life, now locked on him like a target. Whitey hated what the split had done to them. They had gone from brothers to rivals, and now to enemies who couldn't be in the same yard without guns barking. But beneath the hate was something else, something he would never say out loud. Guilt. The kind that never let you sleep easy. The preacher, OG, who had been calling for peace, was pinned inside the school bus, ducking down as rounds ripped through its side. Windows shattered, glass spraying like ice in the dark. Whitey's elder, the smoker, fired from behind a rusted fender, shouting orders that no one could hear over the gunfire. Then came a sound that froze them all. A scream, high-pitched and raw, ripped through the yard. It wasn't the kind of scream that came from a bullet wound. This one was deeper, wetter, torn from a throat just before it collapsed. Lamar's head snapped toward the tree line. His cousin had been running for cover near the cypress edge when something huge slammed into him. The impact lifted him off his feet and carried him into the shadows. The scream cut short with a wet crunch that echoed across the lot. At first, Lamar thought it was a big dog, maybe strays spooked by the noise. But then, it stepped into the light. The dogman rose from the ditch, taller than any man in the yard. Its body caked with mud that sloughed off in clumps. Its hide was dark, fur matted and slick, muscles rippling under it like coiled ropes. Arms hung long, tipped with claws that gleamed wet. Its legs bent wrong, like it had been built to run in ways no human could. Its head was a stretched wolf's, muzzle wide, ears sharp, eyes burning a dull yellow that cut through the dark. The gunfire stuttered. For a moment, both sides forgot their beef. They just stared. The creature snarled, teeth flashing, and leapt forward with terrifying speed. It hit one of Lamar's men full in the chest, claws sinking deep, then tore him apart in a spray of blood. The body hit the ground in pieces, bones snapping like dry twigs. Chaos followed. Men screamed and scattered, some firing wild, others dropping their weapons and running for the fence. Bullets tore into the dogman's body, fur and flesh ripping away, but it didn't stop. It moved like the rounds were nothing, swatting men aside with sweeps of its claws, its roar shaking the metal stacks around them. Whitey fired until his slide locked back, then slammed in a fresh mag with trembling hands. He aimed for the head, squeezing off 2 shots that sparked against its skull. The dogman barely flinched. Its gaze snapped toward him, and for the first time in years, Whitey felt real fear dig into his chest. The preacher OG inside the bus cried out as the roof dented under the dogman's weight. The creature landed on top of it with a crash, claws ripping through the thin metal. Men inside screamed, scrambling for the back door as the monster's head shoved through the hole it had torn. It bit down, dragging one man out and shaking him like a rag doll before hurling him into the side of a car with bone-shattering force. Lamar's blood ran cold. He had seen death, but nothing like this. Not men killing men, but something ancient, something built to hunt. He emptied half a mag into the beast's chest, each shot punching into it, but it didn't even slow down. The dogman turned toward him, yellow eyes glowing in the lot's floodlights. Its lips peeled back in a snarl that was almost a grin. For a moment, time stopped. Lamar's finger hovered on the trigger, his heart pounding against his ribs. He thought about Dion, about the nights running the block with Whitey, about all the blood spilled between them. All of it seemed small in the face of this thing. Then he saw Whitey. Across the yard, Whitey was watching him too. No words, no signals, but both understood. If they didn't work together, none of them were getting out alive. Whitey broke from cover, sprinting low toward the Silverado parked near the gate. Lamar moved at the same time, his feet carrying him without thought. Gunfire still cracked in the background, men screaming, the dogman roaring as it leapt down from the bus roof. But Lamar didn't look back. He ran. And for the first time in years, he wasn't running to kill Whitey. He was running with him. They reached the truck at the same time, yanking the doors open. Lamar slid behind the wheel, Whitey into the passenger seat. 2 men from the back scrambled in after them, faces pale and wide-eyed. Lamar twisted the key and the engine roared awake. The dogman spun toward the sound, claws dripping, eyes fixed on the Silverado. Whitey leaned out the window, firing as fast as he could, rounds sparking in the dark. Lamar slammed his foot on the gas. The tires squealed, gravel spitting out as the truck lurched forward. The gate's chain link rattled hard as they blasted through it, headlights cutting across the levee road. Behind them, the dogman crouched low and leapt, landing on the dirt with a force that made the ground tremble. It roared once, a sound that carried across the swamp like thunder, and then it gave chase. The Silverado fishtailed as Lamar pushed it harder, Whitey's gunfire echoing out the window. The scrapyard burned with screams and gunfire behind them. Ahead was only swamp and the narrow road, and between them and the dark, death followed fast. The levee road stretched out ahead, a thin ribbon of cracked asphalt pressed tight between swamp water on one side and cane fields on the other. The Silverado roared down it, engine straining, headlights bouncing over potholes. Lamar's hands locked on the wheel, every muscle in his body tight. Behind them, the dogman was closing. Its claws dug deep into the dirt, propelling it forward with impossible speed. It ran on two legs, but used its arms like outriggers, slamming them into the ground for balance as it sprinted. Its eyes burned in the mirror, twin yellow flames that refused to fade. Whitey leaned halfway out the passenger window, firing steady bursts. Each shot lit his face, his jaw set, his eyes locked on the monster behind them. Brass casings bounced off the roof and scattered into the dark. The beast staggered when rounds hit, tufts of fur and blood spraying, but it never slowed. In the back seat, two men clutched their weapons with shaking hands. One was young, barely 20, his knuckles white as he pointed a pistol out the shattered rear window. The other was older, face lined and eyes hollow, gripping a shotgun like it was the only thing keeping him alive. The dogman leapt forward, covering 20 feet in a single bound. Its claws raked across the tailgate, carving deep grooves in the metal. The Silverado shuddered. The young man in back screamed and opened fire, bullets punching into the beast's face. The dogman's head jerked back, but then it lunged again, slamming onto the truck bed with bone-rattling force. The rear end bucked, shocks bottoming out. The young man's scream cut short as claws hooked him and dragged him through the busted window. 1 second he was there, the next he was gone, hurled into the trees with a sickening crunch. "Shit," Whitey growled, bracing himself against the dash. The older man shoved his shotgun through the shattered rear glass and fired. The blast lit the cab, the smell of burnt powder filling their lungs. The dogman howled as buckshot tore into its shoulder, spraying fur and blood. It reared back but clung tighter, claws digging into the roof. Lamar yanked the wheel, swerving hard left. The truck fishtailed, tires spitting gravel, the beast sliding across the roof. For a second, it looked like it would be thrown off, but it drove its claws deeper, peeling steel like paper. Its head snapped down, jaws forcing their way through the windshield. Glass exploded inward, shards raining across Lamar and Whitey. The dogman's teeth snapped inches from Lamar's face, spittle spraying across the wheel. He jammed his pistol up under its jaw and pulled the trigger. The blast rocked the cab, blood and fur spraying the dash. The beast howled, but it didn't fall. Whitey drew his own gun and fired point blank into its eye. The creature reeled back, shrieking, its body thrashing against the Silverado. The truck swayed, tires screeching, as Lamar fought to keep control. Ahead, the road bent around a massive live oak that had stood longer than the city itself. Its trunk was thick, roots breaking through the asphalt, branches stretching high. Lamar saw it coming and knew there wasn't another way. He locked eyes with Whitey. No words, just understanding. "On 3, Lamar rasped. Whitey nodded, blood running down the side of his face from a glass cut. 1, the dogman roared, shoving deeper into the cab, claws tearing the dash apart. 2. The older man in the back seat began praying frantically, looking as if he was experiencing shock. The panic was consuming him. 3. Lamar and Whitey threw their doors open and dove into the ditch. The world spun in a blur of mud and weeds as they rolled across the ground. Behind them, the Silverado slammed headlong into the oak. The older man didn't jump out. The impact was brutal. Metal crumpled like paper, the engine block punching forward, the roof folding under the pressure. The older man's body was crushed, free of the panic he just endured. The dogman, jammed half inside the cab, took the full force. Its body snapped against the tree, pinned and crushed. Its howl echoed through the swamp, rattling the air, then broke into a choking gurgle. Silence followed, broken only by the hiss of steam and the tick of cooling metal. Lamar pushed himself up. Dirt stuck to the blood on his face. His shoulder burned, his chest heaved. He staggered toward the wreck, gun in hand, Whitey limping beside him. The Silverado was a twisted heap against the oak, smoke curling from under its hood. The dogman still moved. Its chest rose and fell in ragged jerks, yellow eyes dimming but not gone. It thrashed weakly, claws scraping the crumpled metal, its body too broken to pull free. Even dying, it radiated raw menace, as if it would rise again if given the chance. Lamar stopped a few feet away, his pistol aimed steady. Whitey stepped up beside him, blood running down his arm, gun raised too. For a moment, the two men stood together, united not by choice, but by necessity. The monster growled, low and wet, eyes flicking between them. "Let's end this," Whitey muttered, voice hoarse. "Say less," Lamar said, his tone flat. Together, they fired. Shot after shot, muzzle flashes strobing the night, each bullet punching into the beast's skull until its head was nothing but ruin. The growls faded, the claws stilled, the chest went still. When it was over, silence wrapped the swamp again. The air was heavy with gunpowder, blood, and smoke. Lamar lowered his gun, breathing hard, staring at the mangled corpse. He had thought the streets were the worst thing this world could throw at him. Now he knew better. Whitey stood beside him, his gun hanging at his side, eyes locked on the dead beast. He shook his head slowly, as if trying to process what they had just survived. "All this time," he said, voice low, "we were too busy killing each other to see what was really out here." Lamar glanced at him, his face unreadable. For years he had hated this man, dreamed of ending him. Now they had walked through death side by side, and something inside him had shifted. "There's worse than us," Lamar said finally. "Much worse." Whitey met his eyes. The two men stood in the shadow of the oak, the corpse of a nightmare between them. And something like understanding passed between them. Maybe it wasn't forgiveness. Maybe it wasn't friendship. But it was a truce, born in blood and fire. They turned from the wreck, their silhouettes fading into the dark swamp road. Enemies yesterday, survivors tonight. Tomorrow, maybe something more. Not gangsters, not rivals. Hunters of the unknown.
If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to Descent into the Unknown for more horror content. If you have any real cryptid encounters, or you're a horror writer wanting to share your stories, please feel free to email me in the description anytime.